Welcome back for everyone who has been kind of following along with our In the Dugout podcast. We are here for another episode. Today I'm joined by Coach Ray Noe, the head coach at Longwood University. And let's get started with another episode of High and Tight.
Okay, let's do this thing.
Coach, a nice cold morning. I'm sure in Farmville. I'm sure it's the same frigid temperature as it is about an hour away. How are we this morning?
Doing great. Yeah, nothing better than a cold morning in Farm Vegas, man. It's but all's good here. All's good.
What it was like 70 a few weeks ago, right before Christmas, probably like a few days before Christmas, and then we flipped the calendar to the new year and try to get the ball rolling for college baseball and baseball season in January and February, and this is what we get, I guess.
Yeah, a little concerning driving back from the ABCA when all the news outlets said, "Hey, 9 to 12 inches," and I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." But thankfully, we didn't get too much. It's cold and we got some ice, but it didn't hit us too hard, which was good.
Yeah, it's fun, the kind of the innocence of kids. Have a daughter and son, and daughters. I mean, son's a little bit like dad, a little bit more of like a realist, and may have some sarcasm attached to him. And daughter's, sweet, innocent little girl, and she's like, well, the weatherman or whatever weather person said that there's gonna be we might get 6 inches. Da, 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 da. I was like, babe, like you'll know how much snow we're gonna get when you walk outside after the snow, because they're gonna know exactly the same amount.
Exactly.
So I think we end up getting like an inch and a half, something like that. But what so when are guys getting back on campus, and how are things? How are we progressing into practice? Obviously that date is the next week.
Yeah, 24th. So 24th is when
24th.
we can go live. That's 3 weeks before the first competition. But so our guys will report back anywhere from the 12th to the 14th. We have our first team meeting on the 14th. So some may come back that Sunday, which is the 12th, or Monday, or maybe even that Tuesday. And then our undergrad classes start on Wednesday, the 15th. So we'll have like a week and a couple days of indies in kind of that 8-hour window until we can really ramp things up here starting the 24th. But, we put a lot of emphasis on what they're doing during the break. We meet with every player before they leave. We talk about their individualized player development plans, and then especially the arms, making sure, if they're in a shutdown window, how they're ramping up, and, having to throw some bullpens along the way just to make sure that their pitch count is working in the right direction. And our pitching coach and pitching development staff does such a good job with that. So we feel pretty good. Hopefully, that they did their work coming into this next week.
Yeah, it's funny, not necessarily like specifically baseball related, but you have colleges who come back, and I guess understandably so, but you have colleges that come back. It's a pretty big variation in terms of like when classes start and all that stuff. And then, I don't know if you like follow college football or if you have time to follow college football, but
I'm a Buckeye, man. Come on, of course I follow it.
Oh, okay. Big game this week.
Big one.
Hook 'em horns.
We're gonna go. What they do this, right? That's what the kids do right there.
But with the transfer portal and guys, flipping over, I guess you could say, not mid-year, like postseason, but mid-year in terms of classes. Like I was at a college last night, and I think they starting classes like this week. And then you got schools, like you said, like y'all aren't till the 15th. So some of those portal kids are like missing their window to maybe transfer into that school because they're still in the CFP or whatever. It's just like everything. There's just like a lot of kind of unknown and a lot of variance in all of the rules and all that stuff. But that's a completely different podcast.
Yeah, it was my first time, obviously, as a head coach sitting in the ABCA, the Division I coaches meeting, and I do think they're putting some things forward. Like I think the most important one on this topic would be the 35 days window is now when you're going to be able to practice. So if schools have difference of when they start and when they don't, it doesn't just like force us to rush, because I mean it's only 3 weeks now. So that 35 days give us a month and a couple days should help, I think, a little bit. Just with, I think at the end of the day, just like including a ramp up in preventing injuries rather than trying to rush things in that 3 week period that we have. So hopefully that will pass, and I think that will be helpful.
So potentially, I guess, would practice start, potentially, again, like nothing's set in stone, potentially practice might start a little bit sooner, or the season might be pushed back a week or two, which would make 100% sense.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to push it back. That does make the most sense, but I think practice will start sooner. So maybe we'll get our guys back on campus earlier, which, I mean, there's pros and cons of that too, right? I think there is value of the kids going home and being able to reset and hang out with family and friends, but it does provide us, I think, with a little bit, at least, some, we can be creative with those dates. Maybe we don't use the whole 35, but, in my opinion, it's a heck of a lot better than rushing in the 3 weeks that we have now.
Yeah, 3 weeks to prepare for, what is it, like a 60-game season?
Yeah.
Is insanity. But anyway, I digress. So just give us a little bit of, we'll get into maybe some other things, but give me a little bit of your, as it relates kind of directly to your college coaching career and kind of how you've gotten to where you're at now.
Yep. So I went to Wittenberg University. It's a D3 in Dayton, played under Jay Lewis, and then my major there was special education. So I went right into teaching. So I got I did that for 7 years. I had just an honor coaching under Brian Thacker, who's a good friend of mine at Bloom Carroll, and they're really successful if you know anything about D3 baseball in Ohio from the high school side. And then kind of sprungboard that to a couple other jobs. And first head coaching job was at Bexley High School. Took over for Tom Marker there, who actually just spoke at the ABCA this past weekend. He's also a good friend. And he did such a good job with the program, really just gave me the keys to the car, man. And then did 1 year there, went to Pickerington Central after that, which is a Division I school, so the highest level in Ohio, and a really, really strong school in athletics in general. And then, at one point I was getting my master's at Ohio State, and I said, hey, I want to try this, college coaching route. So I actually went down to IMG Academy in the summer, and it was awesome. I lived on like a 30-foot trailer with my dog down there on some rich person's front yard in a bay. It was sick. And did the whole IMG experience for the summer, got hired full-time based on, I guess, the work that I put in the summer. And I did that, which was incredible. Dan Simons, who's the director down there, was incredible to me. And then I got to VMI in the fall of 2019, so right before the COVID season that got canceled. And the relationship there was Jonathan Hadra, who was the head coach at the time, who's now ODU's hitting coach. His brother, Daniel Hadra, was a pitching coach, and he's now the pitching coordinator at IMG Academy. So there was a connection there, and Jonathan took a shot on a 30-year-old at the time, and I was the volley for him and had no college coaching experience, but just forever grateful for him taking the chance on me. And then they made some changes amongst the staff after that COVID season, and I got bumped to hitting coach, and I did that for 2 years. And then Sam Roberts, who's now BMI's head coach for the past 2 years, going on his third season, he was the pitching coach when Jonathan left. Sammy, we pushed Sammy for the job, and obviously super excited that he got it. He kept me on staff, and bumped me to recruiting coordinator and just gave me full autonomy to do everything. And then Longwood came about in this summer, and it was something that my wife and family and I thought was something we could jump on, and just really lucky, man. Just it's just weird. Everyone has their own story, but mine's a little bit different, maybe because of the teaching route. But it's learned a lot along the ways, and thankful for a lot of people.
It's for people that don't quite understand like the college coaching path, it can be a long and winding road. Some much longer than others, and take some very different paths and avenues and stops along the way. But 2019 to 2024, getting into it, it's a pretty quick turnaround. So kudos to you for kind of sort of I don't want to say getting to the top of the mountain, because I'm sure you have goals and aspirations. You're a young guy, so I'm sure you have goals and aspirations and stuff. But getting that head coaching job, 4 or 5 years in, credit to work ethic and persona and personality and all those things. So now getting into the kind of meat and potatoes of this, programs and staffs, kind of have their own style of what fits, whether it be player or program or coach or whatever. This is year one, not only as a head coach, but obviously year one at Longwood. How do you and your staff want to define the Lancers program like this spring and beyond? Just like short and long term, how do y'all want to define the Lancers program?
Yeah, great question. Biggest thing for us, we kind of have 4 pillars that we talk about every day, and we ingrain those in our practice and just amongst our conversations with our kids. But like number one is relationships. We're big on that. If you know me at all, I like to think I'm a pretty decent dude, and honestly, probably unapologetically myself at times, which can be good and bad. But we want the kids to be them. We believe in everyone's different, and we want them to be them, and we're good on that. And we talk about like being you, but aligning with us, which is something that is an important, I guess, philosophy in our program. So, relationships with the transfer portal, which you alluded to earlier, you have guys coming in and out. Sometimes you don't always have guys in your program for 2, 3, 4 years, and maybe it's guys just coming in for 1 year. So how you gotta lock into each other. You got to make a commitment to each other. You have to try to get to know each other. So relationships are big. I think also from there is accountability. We're big in like, if we mess up, whether it's myself or a player, like just take accountability for it. Hold each other accountable, hold yourself accountable. And I think if you can do that and you can see the bigger picture of things, I think you can be really successful. We talk a ton about process-based mindset. That's huge for us. And that's hard for young people. That's hard for me even to take those proper steps and not always worry about the end result, because, at the end of the day, you get these jobs or you don't if you win or lose. And I understand that, but I'm a believer if we can teach, quality systems and develop quality habits over the course of time, we'll get the result that we want. So relationships, accountability, fun is really important. I know that sounds basic and maybe elementary, but like we have fun, man. The game is fun. It's a child's game. We want our guys to want to come down to the field every day and get after it. So if you're at a practice, we're bumping music, we're competing. We're doing things that keeps the guys engaged while also having fun. And the last thing is probably just competitors. I think at this level, you have good players, they have great players, but I don't think you can, it's such a underrated value of someone who knows how to compete every single day. And that's that's in the classroom, that's on the field. That's like, if you and I are playing ping pong, are you competing in that? So those are definitely kind of our 4 pillars that we talk about daily. And, there's more to that. I mean, you mentioned it's the first year, right? So, I want Longwood to be competing for the Big South Championship every year. and that takes time. But I think with these pillars and some of the other things that we do systematically, hopefully we can get the right players in here and continue to build. And at the end of the day, I think relationships win, and that's what we're going to try to do here.
Now, you talked a little bit about like guys having fun and enjoying practice and enjoying kind of that. I guess it's a cliche word, but that grind that it can be college baseball. What does a typical day outside of the norm going to class type thing? What does a typical day for a Lancer look like?
Yeah, so we go to obviously class. We'll have early work groups, which are strategically planned by our pitching coach and hitting coach, Tyler Sullivan and Eric Miles. And, we put the guys in groups based on a couple things, player development, like are they doing the same stuff? Are they doing stuff differently? But also we took over a brand new program with brand new players. And so kind of integrating the players and getting, kind of eliminating the cliques if there were any, but more importantly, like we had 18 freshmen that we took on. So ingraining those freshmen with the upperclassmen and things of that nature. But usually, like if we're on our 8-hour window, we'll go, or early work groups. We may do a little bit of a team defense or base running or, something like that throughout, but just your time's a little bit limited. And then we team lift. That was a big thing for me. I wanted to make sure that we team lift together 3 days a week or 4 days a week. So that's what we do. Josh Aker, who's our strength coach, is really good. So anything we do on the field, we kind of mimic what we do in the weight room. So we kind of have high days and low days, which essentially he's way smarter than me. But what he's told me is if you're going to attack the central nervous system, you want to keep attacking it the same on a given day. So you don't want to go light at the field and hard in the weight room. You actually want to do hard at the field, hard in the weight room, and then give your body a real chance to recover. So him and I talk all the time about what we're doing on the field. And then we got, like I said, mimic that in the weight room. But then when we get in our full cycle, like come January 24th, we're going to do a lot of team and stuff. We don't practice or do a ton of first, third defense or first, third offense. We do it, but the majority of the time, honestly, is just spent on developing our guys and getting them better. So we're going to hit a ton, and we're going to defend a ton, and we're going to install the principles that we need because that's important. But we just think if we can just get these guys moving in the right direction, we think we have a chance. And I think I got a really good staff that knows how to identify deficiencies or issues or problems amongst the respective players, and then even more than that, going in and figuring out how to attack it to get them better. So
now, like when you talk about the freshmen that were coming in this year, that came in this year, the 20, I guess the 2025s that y'all have recruited and honestly kind of killed on the recruiting trail, there and beyond. What are some main things that you're looking for in recruits, whether it be positional, whether it be arms, you and your staff? What are kind of some standout features?
Yeah, great question. We're super excited. The freshmen that we inherited, I thought Ox and his staff did a great job. We're excited about that group. And then, the 25 class is definitely, I would say, more our mold, if you will, for what we're trying to implement systematically. So, we like athleticism. Everyone does, but we're going to play a fast style. The system that we put in at VMI with Sammy and myself, just with the base stealing thing, is something that I feel very comfortable with and something we want to try to bring here. Right now I think we have some guys that can do it, but the personnel isn't perfect, which is fine. So, the biggest thing for me is like, I think it's really important to take a look at who's in your locker room and figure out how you can get the best out of those guys. But moving forward, I do think you can recruit to what you want. There's a lot of good players in that class, and there's a lot of players on the pitching side that throw a ton of strikes, and that's one thing that we're really trying to go more towards. I'm a big believer with Brandon Hill, who's our director of pitching development analytics, and Eric Miles, our pitching coach, that like if we have a guy who's lesser velo, like I firmly believe that they'll get their stuff better. But I think it's hard to teach kids how to throw strikes. That's kind of where I lie, I guess, in that threshold. I saw Driveline just came out with like their command training stuff here recently, which was intriguing. But I think if you have a guy that can throw 70% strikes, like he's probably going to be at that. Because at the end of the day, college baseball is really good hitters, and when you get behind in the count, and you're forced to throw a baseball over the plate, I mean, hitters can do some damage. So, I would lean more towards, from a pitching side at least, hey, let's get ahead early and often, and if we get up a couple hits, I'm good on that. And then, just offensively, athleticism, like I said, ability to defend. You don't want to handcuff yourself with having a bunch of DHs or corner infielder type guys. We want guys that can play everywhere. And I mean, that class in particular with Mac Lawson and JT Brown, who I know you love, and some of the other guys in that class from the offensive side, like Ben Pulliam in the outfield, like it's a really good group that's starting to fit kind of what we're trying to do.
No, there's some hitters and some athletes in that class for sure. And that was kind of like, outside looking in, like sometimes you can see what that class is made up of and not only see like the talent, but you can also see kind of some of the direction you feel like without, having the conversation with yourself or with someone on your staff, kind of get some direction like, all right, this is something that's going to be important to them. And I think that's important, like for us to either be able to know or either be able to recognize, to where when we have that phone call, when you shoot me a text or, when I talk to somebody on the staff, like, hey, what do you think about this guy? I can say, hey, like, think he fits what y'all are trying to do, or, hey, I don't know if that one's going to work.
Plus makeup too. That's the one thing, like all of those kids in that class are A++ kids, A++ families. And that's important to me. Like when you make a commitment to a kid, it's a commitment to their family and you want them involved. And like that class is in particular, because it's our first and it's a special one to me. I mean, those kids and those families are A++.
Now let me ask you a question. This is kind of, I guess maybe sidebar. Didn't have this one planned, but since you kind of mentioned that, with a lot of times if your first stint is at said place, and you were there for an extended period of time, obviously some of those maybe characteristics or things that you do or look for or need in players, kind of, I guess, mold you a little bit, kind of like that it's like a lasting first impression, I guess, if you will.
Sure.
With VMI, like obviously with the military setting and some of the requirements as a person, not only as a player, but as a person there, do you think that plays into some of that? Like we see some guys take guys that, hey, this guy's got some talent. We're going to work on the makeup piece and we're going to work on, some of the other things and try to mold that, as opposed to bringing in, like you said, like high character, high makeup kids that fit what you want to do. Do you think those previous, 4-ish years, in Lexington kind of made that, if you will, like a pillar, of importance in terms of the makeup piece?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and it even goes deeper than that, just the way I was raised and I guess like the values in my family and that was ingrained into me when I was young. But VMI, man, I mean, those kids, I were the best. You're taking you're making a huge sacrifice going to one of the hardest schools in the country, in my opinion. And the makeup of those kids was as good as it gets. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to have a everlasting impact and effect on me and how I view people. Because I know, when you're in that there, you just know how special those kids are. And they chose to go that route. And, they always talk about it being unordinary. And that's what it is. So we want kids that are willing to come here, that have that makeup. Because I feel like when you have that makeup and you have the family backing or support, you don't have to worry about some of the other things that are involved in college. Now you still may, and you may miss in that capacity, but there's just a lot of stuff that, kids can get into nowadays. And, I think if you can eliminate some of those distractions and have kids that have quality mindsets and quality upbringing and the ability to continue to impact them in really impactful years, 18 to 22 or whatever age we're getting to now in college baseball. But, I think that's what we try to do for sure.
All right. Now you had a little stint for people that may not know. You had a little stint with prep baseball, and that's kind of like, I guess like the first time that we met. I think you kind of brought that up and we talked about that briefly. You had a little stint with prep baseball while you were in Ohio, right?
I did. Yep, I did.
What did that look like? What did you, I don't know, like what all that entailed. So just kind of what were some of your obligations, if you will, or responsibilities?
Yeah. So I'll give a shout out here to the GOAT, if you will, of prep baseball, and Chris Valentine, who owns about every state in the country. But I grew up with his brother, Corey Valentine, and good friends still to this day. And, I was in the realm of probably some of your employees where, I was in college or just there out, and, why not stay around the game? When you're out, you don't really know what to do. I trained and ran a marathon when I was like 26 years old, which I'll never do again. So I thought, doing this prep baseball thing, pretty new at the time, but just being around, just being on the field, being around high school kids and good players. And also, I was coaching high school at the time. So seeing some of my kids there and watching them go through the recruiting process was important to me. But yeah, working for Chris and for PBR was unbelievable. We had some of the best times. I can just remember just being on the field, whether it was top prospect games in Ohio, where at the time I think they give out free Chick-fil-A, and I'm like, what is this place? This Prasco Park is unbelievable. Or drinking 70 Red Bulls in a day just to stay alive because you're just trying to keep grinding. But the big thing for me that I took from it, honestly, and I would say this to this day, was just the ability to see players and evaluate them, like being on the field, being so ingrained in that. I think now that's helped me just when I go out on the road and look at players and how you look at them and how you value certain things. Because shoot, I probably had 1,000+ evaluations, every day, when or in every summer, if you will, because you're working so many events. But yeah, I loved PBR, man. That's why I just, whenever I see, your staff on the road or yourself, like it's awesome. I just got so much respect for it because it's cool. And you guys have grown the game so much. I remember when it first started, it's just a few states here or there. And, when I was playing, like we had like top 96 was the big thing. And you didn't have anything else. Like if you were good, you had to go to camp, you had to do some things. But now, I'm on PBR, Virginia in particular, like every day, checking the rankings, checking players, watching videos. So, you've saved us as coaches thousands of hours. So we appreciate you too, Burton.
Appreciate it, Coach. I appreciate it. So free Chick-fil-A, huh?
Yeah, they did. And I know it's burgers and like whatever now, which is still sweet, but yeah, it was unbelievable. JD Heilman was the scouting director back then, and JD's he had some stints at UC and some other places. I think he's in Pro Bowl now, but yeah, we tried to eat them out of their food, and they just kept going. But it was good times.
Yeah, he's Chris has employed some guys who are pretty heavily involved with college baseball and in the college game now. Yourself and I know it's a few others. The names, just because you're keeping up so much in your own state, sometimes you don't learn the names that are in other states. I know they have a guy who was there for a long time. I'm sure you know the name. He's at Wright State now. I think his recruiting coordinator and
Jordan Cairo. We open with Wright State this year, so should be good.
Okay. All right. Now, future games. You had previously attended the event, but this past year, obviously, this past summer was your first as a head coach. seeing you there, you seem to be pretty dialed in on what was the first year of senior future games. So what was 2025's? We had said JT Brown on
Yep.
on the roster. Um, how big would you say the addition of that event was? You know, everybody has so much focus and so much emphasis and all of that onto the regular future games, and then of course we've had the younger guys for quite some time, and this was the first year for the senior. How big would you say the addition of that event was for you, and what did you enjoy about it?
I loved it. The future games is a crazy event. Um, but the addition of the 2025 for us, at least, was massive. Because I honestly, you talked about the class. Like, I thought there was a lot of very good players when I took over that were still out there, and we tried to jump on them pretty quick. So, we had JT Brown on campus. Kind of was trying to figure out what he wanted to do. We went down and saw him again at the 2025 future game. Same with Cal Travers, who also was on that team, left-handed pitcher who's committed to us, and got to see both of them. Just to be present, I think, is important too. Obviously, being in the mix with them, showing them, hey, we care, we're coming down to see you. But even more than that, just watching them play, and landed two of those guys off of that squad, which we were super excited for. But yeah, I mean, we were in conversations with some of the other teams too, not just Virginia. Looking at some of the Ohio teams or North Carolina or Massachusetts or whatever. There was good players still available, and it really helped us kind of hone in on, hey, what do you think of this kid? Let's cross-check him. But because at the time, we, like I said, I thought there was a ton of players out there, and I was happy with the ones that we landed.
Yeah, it was a split squad. North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy on the North Carolina and Virginia side. A few Maryland guys. And for the record, first year of senior future games, we went undefeated. So shout out to that group. Oh yeah, no. The competitor you talking about, doesn't matter whether you're playing ping pong or whatever. Like, yeah, no, it's not about that, whatever. But yeah, it is.
Yeah, talk your talk. Darn right.
Yeah, still trying to win. 2-0-1 in senior future game. In regular future games. I guess 3-0 in senior games, and the junior future games team made it to the championship, which got rained out. So
Nice.
VA talent just flowing through the blood.
I love it.
Now, with the recruiting timelines changing, obviously that impacts your timeline on the process, and obviously it recruits the timeline in which things can happen. The player, making the phone call to the coach, or the conversations obviously are different. What would you say to families in terms of continuing to kind of build the resume and being proactive in their recruitment? I think we've gotten to a point where a lot of people are like, oh, well, X school can't offer my kid. And so, we're just going to kind of sit back until that time gets here, until August 1 of their junior year or whatever, or going into their junior year, August 1. How would you tell them to be proactive, build the resume, things like that, even when you can't have that mutual contact or those direct conversations?
Yeah, I think the timeline, being pushed back was obviously happened recently, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but what it does, I think, is puts a little bit more emphasis on the 27s, if you will, now, because we can't talk to them, or the 28s. Get out there, get to events, be seen, get a profile. I mean, like I talked about earlier, I'm on PBR every single day. So if you're not on there, and I know this is a PBR podcast, but this is coming from me, you need to get on there. I mean, it helps. I also think the camps that the respective colleges or universities have around the country, when you go to camp, the coaching staff can talk to you. So if you want to get seen, if you want to get noticed, if you want to kind of get a vibe for, hey, what's this school like? Hey, what's this coaching staff like? I mean, for our camps, we always give campus tours which can give them just a little bit more insight to, hey, this is what Longwood's about. I think it's critical to do that. I would be hard pressed to tell people to wait. Everyone puts so much emphasis on August 1st, like, oh, I better get a call on August 1st. I better get it. And that's not always, I understand that, but that's not, we've called guys on August 1st and 2nd and 3rd and wherever, but you can create relationships prior to that, which just allows, I think, the whole recruiting process moving forward to be a little bit maybe easier, because you don't have to maybe catch up on some of the conversations and relationships. Like, because for me, like, I'm not going to offer a kid until I know what they're about, so like having extensive conversations and asking, about stuff outside of baseball, about their family, about their girlfriend, about, whatever, is important to us, because we're trying to recruit the whole package, not just the player, like I've talked about earlier, and that's important to me. So I tell our staff all the time, like, get to know them, like, talk to them about stuff other than baseball. If they're a football player, ask them how many tackles they had. Hey, are you going to prom? Like, what are you doing for Christmas? Things like this. So I think if people are proactive, going back to your point, and in those younger classes, by attending camps and getting to events, I think it's critical.
Yeah, and I think understanding like what you're going to get out of that, regardless of whether it's coming to one of our events or going to a college camp, like, understand the purpose of what it is, of what that event is. Again, whether it's a college camp or whether it's a recruiting event or whatever, like, having a purpose and understanding like the expectation when you come out of that.
Exactly.
Like, why are you there? Do everything with a purpose. Don't just show up somewhere, hey, I'm just here to get some video, right? Or I'm just here to, get in front of the staff. Like, have a purpose for what it is that you're doing. Because I think that's going to be huge in the intent when you go
like
into those.
If we're at one of your events and it's predominantly 2026s, but there's a couple of 27 sprinkled in there, and we like them, like, we're going to circle them, we're going to put them in their database, and we're going to revisit them, once it comes. So 100%, like, if you come to an event or you're playing in a summer game or whatever, and you just think, oh, because I'm younger and coaches can't talk to me, they're not going to watch me or see me, like, you're dead wrong on that. So we talk to our guys all the time about, like, intention, attention, and then reflection, like, in everything that they do. So, like, what's your intent today? Is it, like you said, is it just to get video? That's probably, you have the wrong intention. And then when you're doing it, are you paying attention to it? And then, at the end, we always talk about the reflection piece, like, okay, your intent was this, you paid attention to it during it, did you? And then now let's reflect on it afterward. Did you do a good job? How can we adjust moving forward? But yeah, 100% agree with your point.
And I think that, like you said, like, the timeline, kind of whether you agree with it or not, I personally, just like personal feelings, all positions or whatever aside, I love it, because I think it gives the player more time to mature. It's not the rat race of, well, this school offered, well, now I got to get in there too. And, everybody's jumping on to maybe players, or people are jumping on to players that maybe, like you said, they haven't done their background work on, they don't know about. And so I think that allowing players to develop physically, mature, physically, emotionally, socially, all those different things, as well as allow a staff to see where that player is actually going. Are we plateauing? Are we an early jump guy? And, how many times I know that I say this, like, how many times have you seen guys like that were really good as a freshman or sophomore and then just continue to regress?
Sure.
And then you have the other side of the coin where you see a guy who just wasn't great, as a freshman, and just made massive jumps as a junior or senior for whatever reasons, and then, got to become pretty good. And I think this timeline allows coaches to, I don't want to say, not miss,
Sure,
but it definitely helps out in that process of knowing whether this guy is actually a fit or not.
Yeah, you just never know about the progression of people. That's why I never say, like, we'll meet with the staff and, hey, what do you think about Johnny? And, I will never say, oh, he's not good enough. Like, because you just never know what they can turn into. Now you can make comments, hey, right now, hey, maybe he's a little bit light in this, or maybe he's a little bit weaker, or whatever. But yeah, just to simply say like, hey, he's not good or not good enough right now. I mean, I just think so much can change in so little time if the kids are willing to put in the work, and maybe they're a late bloomer, maybe they're just weak right now and they gain strength, and you're like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? I'm sure we could talk about countless examples about kids that would fit this mold, but yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
All right, now we talked about travel a little bit. Haven't talked about necessarily high school as much. I know that's a tough time for you and the staff, obviously just because y'all are in the middle of your season. But travel, showcase, world circuit versus high school recruiting. Obviously, you're able to be more present during that summer circuit. But what are maybe some differences when you are able to get out to see players during the high school season? What are maybe some differences that maybe you look for in players between those two settings, one versus the other?
Yeah, good question. I think, first of all, you got to have relationships with both parties. So, the high school coach and the summer coach, or whoever's handling that recruitment piece. Because I think if you can create the relationships, you can actually get the true information that you're looking for. So for me, from a high school standpoint, and our staff will go out, including myself, in the spring, and maybe just go see guys that are committed or go see guys that we're interested in or whatever. But I think you can take a lot in high school just by seeing how they lead, seeing how they carry themselves. You're playing for your school, your town, your city. There's a lot of value in that, So I think that's a really big thing. And I'm not maybe discrediting the summer, if you're playing for whoever you play for, that you don't care about it. But I mean, it's a constant thing, even with our guys. Like, summer baseball is way different than playing the collegiate season. And I think you can get a lot from that. You can look at the intangibles, and also I think the high school season is a perfect segue into the summer, because then at least for me, you can't just evaluate a position player pitcher once. I think you got to see him a bunch of times. So just being able to kind of cross check them, if they will, in the high school. Okay, hey, we like this kid. Let's talk to his coach about how he is, because he sees them 8 hours a day, especially if he teaches in the school. And then okay, great, we got that information. Do we still like him as a player? Okay, we do. Let's see how he handles himself on this bigger circuit, potentially in the summer, where you're playing, quote unquote, more important games against bigger competition or whatever. And let's see where they fall. So I think it's such a beautiful blend, and I think you have to have both.
Yeah, I think, one thing, like you said, yes, during the high school season, depending on where you're playing, who you're playing with, who you're playing against, and the same can be said for summer, but that can be controlled, at least to some degree. When you get in the high school season, yes, it's going to be more hit and miss at certain times, in terms of maybe if you're a hitter, the arm you're facing.
Sure.
And same goes for on the mound. Are you facing comparable competition? To where it's easy or easier to evaluate how that's going to translate. So, I think there is some of that. Whereas also, I think that people don't place enough value, and not necessarily in terms of college coaches, but in terms of whether it be parents or just the baseball community as a whole, don't place enough value on the fact of what you just alluded to, being able to see a kid's makeup, a kid's competitiveness, a kid's pride, more so in what's on the front of the jersey is sometimes what's on the back. And, I know that's kind of cliche, but I think that's, especially if character and makeup and competitiveness and things like that are something that's very important to you, which they are, obviously, as you've alluded to. I think that's where the high school, recruiting, kind of takes that step forward. Whereas, travel and showcase, if you're playing not only, I don't even want to say right org, if you're playing in the right places versus the right competition, then I think, that allows the evaluation process in terms of how the tools play
Sure.
to be, kind of an easier thing. And, it's crazy. Sometimes we do tournaments all year and all summer. And sometimes you get teams and they're like, hey, like, I just want to play the best teams every single game, every single weekend. I don't care if it's in pool play, bracket play. Like, you don't have to weaken my pool so that I can get to bracket play. I want to show up and play the best teams. And, it's funny, generally, the teams that say that and want that are the best teams there. And the teams who just want a weaker pool and weaker competition, kind of, day in, day out, are the teams who maybe struggle talent wise. The old saying, iron sharpens iron. And that helps. Like, when you do that, that helps you guys, like, yeah, this kid may not be all tooled up or whatever, but give him a chance to perform versus, one of the top teams, if you will, to show yourself and other staffs like, hey, this kid can compete at that level. It doesn't help, wanting to play the team with the kid, throwing no shots at anybody throwing 72, but it doesn't help, seeing some guy go 3 for 4 off of, a mid-70s arm.
It gives you like an honest evaluation, or at least, it can provide you with a little bit more insight at the end of the day, you're gonna, you alluded to the 72, like, you're gonna see that from time to time, and maybe the result isn't going to be everything, but you're going to look maybe more that day of the intangibles that I spoke about, or if there's any failure that happens, especially when you're facing someone that probably in their mind is inferior to them because they're throwing slow or whatever. Like, you can learn a lot about a kid when that kid strikes them out, or whatever. How they handle that failure, I think, is really important. So there's, you can find so much stuff out there, just from makeup, character, recruiting in general, even when it's not great. But yeah, anytime you can tell me, hey, come over to Richmond and watch, whoever facing whoever, and there's going to be some dudes on both sides, like, I'll be there. Like, that's what it's all about.
It's funny you talk about, like, you can always find something to look at. Kind of a funny story. Had a travel coach one time just ask, and I'm sure you get the same questions. I'm sure you get it way more than I do. Like, hey, like, what are you looking for? What are you looking at? This, that, and the other. And the travel coach was actually at a high school game. And this was prior to going to the high school game. I think a week or two prior they had asked, and I told him, and I was like, especially after you've seen a guy X number of times, like, you kind of get a little bit more fine tooth comb and start to kind of look a little bit deeper into the details. And so I was telling him that, and, how do they handle themselves on the field, this, that, and the other. So we show up at the same game. And we had discussed the player and, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess you could say. And we show up at the same game, and one of that player was playing. And the player had some not so favorable moments in between the lines, not necessarily in performance, but just how they were handling themselves. And that individual was sitting near me, and he looked over and he was like, okay. He was like, I get it now. It's just funny. Like, people show up and they just kind of watch to see who scores and, not looking at anything else. And, I guess obviously the more you do it, the more intricate and the more in depth that you get. But I mean, that's just something that goes to talk about the character piece that you're looking for and all that. Like, it's not always when it's sunny and rainbows and, all those different things. Like, how are you handling the strikeouts? How are you handling the failure? Because it's really hard to be really good in college baseball.
100%. And I think to that point too, like, it's really easy to get crossed off the list based on how you carry yourself. Like, that's, at least for me, and if you don't do it the right way, I can live with someone who, quote unquote, is a lesser player, but has A+ makeup, A+ work ethic. You can see kind of maybe the projection of what you think he could be if he gets in the program. But I'm just not willing to like, I'm not willing to go against our team pillars I talked about earlier, or my own personal values just for talent. Like, you got to have both for me. And that may be different from others, but man, when you're running a program and you got to rely on the kids, like, you want the ones that you're willing to be in the foxhole with, like that's the truth. So, yeah, all that stuff. And, you get a trained eye, like you said, once you do it for a bit, but it's just, we want good people, man. It's not hard to be a good person, a good teammate, and that's what we want.
Yeah, I think it's admirable to kind of have that as one of your non-negotiables and be able to stick to it. And I think that rings true with some of the guys that are coming in that 25 class that I don't want to say we don't know them as well as you do, but, have seen them quite a bit and have seen the ups and downs and how they handle it. So kudos to you and the staff for making that, one of the important things. Because like you said, it only takes one to kind of snowball that culture and that dugout and that clubhouse.
Sure.
So, all right, we're going to wrap up. I got a question for you. And we're going to throw this out there and see what you got. Now, I went to Hampton-Sydney. I did not graduate there. Graduate from Hampton-Sydney. I'd probably still be there trying to graduate. That's a school for smart people. And I may not have, I didn't always like to play school. But I know some things in Farmville and in Farm Vegas, as they say. Some places, obviously, it has grown immensely since 2004. If you could see it in 2004 and what that looked like versus what it looks like in 2025. What are some staples for you in Longwood? Like where are some like must go places, must do things, if you will. I only ventured a few places back then. There was Sun Chase. My wife may or may not have been there. There was the Sun Chase Apartments and McAdoo's and a few other places. But what are some staples for you?
I love it, man. Yeah. So I think first and foremost, the big thing for this would be more for parents, not necessarily for kids, but the green front is the most extensive, insane furniture warehouse. There's like 25 buildings or something of just, it's crazy. So when we took the job, unfortunately, my wife found out about that, and we ventured in there a couple times and probably spent way too much money, but it's cool if you've never seen it. So that would be for kind of the older crowd or the parents listening to this podcast. But food wise, North Street Press Club is by far one of the best places. It's really cool. Carlos, who's I think an owner or part owner there, really helps us out. We hold a lot of events there, and it's kind of the kids spot too, later in the night. But that Fish and Pigs in town, you can never go wrong with some nice barbecue, some brisket, uptown cafes like our local coffee shop, which I love. Super cool place. You got some couches in there, you can chill, pretty neat. And then my wife's favorite, and we eat this a lot. If you're into Mexican food, Banditos is top notch in terms of Mexican place. So it's cool, man. It's small town, as you know. There's still McAdoo's. We love McAdoo's, and Sun Chase is still kicking it. So I'm sure you know that land a little bit. Sounds like, yeah,
they 22 years since I've stepped on Sun Chase.
They've done a good job though, man. We got Chick-fil-A, we got Subway, we got Moe's, we got Panda Express on campus, we got Starbucks around here. So it's it's small town living, if you will. But if you're cool with that and you want to go a place where you can get a solid education and play divisional baseball, like Longwood's it's perfect. I like small town living. Like, it's great for me. Lexington was similar, but it's a cool little place for sure.
So back in 2003, a long time ago, back in 2003, 2004, man, I can't even remember the name of the place, which is terrible for me to say. Right across from the entrance at Hampton Sydney, which was the Fish and Pig, which is now at, the old Ruby Tuesdays for everybody out there. I can't remember the name of the place, but we ventured there a couple nights or three, um, and then there was Burger King, Dairy Queen, the Chinese place. La Perota was a fan favorite. Is La Perota still around? Is up beside oh man, I think up in the Tractor Supply neighborhood.
Okay, maybe,
Cooking.
yeah, maybe, yeah. Pino's is like this is a staple food. They've been here forever.
Pino's was
Pizza,
around.
Italian enjoy, yeah.
But it was no press club. There was no Fish and Pig. Big fan of the press club. Really, really good environment. Really good spot. I think last time I go in there, or one of the last times I went in there was karaoke night. And you never know, right? You go into a place now. I didn't go in there because it was karaoke night. I can tell you that. But stumbled upon karaoke night, and there was a guy in there singing. I think he was singing like Tyler Childers, and he was pretty solid. You never know, right? You're
Never
in a
know.
mixed bag. But he was pretty solid. But no, Press Club's an awesome place, and Fish and Pig. Give a shout out to my man Jordan Jones. He's a big Fish and Pig guy.
I love it, Jordan. Love it.
I think he's a catfish guy.
Okay.
Likes the catfish there. But Coach, I appreciate everything, man. Appreciate the relationship. Appreciate your time always. And we wish you the best of luck this year at Longwood. And we appreciate you joining us for the pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. And keep doing it, man. You're like I told you earlier, helping us out every day, and just excited to continue our relationship and get some good players out of the state kind of moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach, and best of luck.